Yet we gave him the keys to the fucking franchise again for the 5th year in a row. War criminals run this organization. If you were at any of the games that Deshaun Watson's playing at, boo!
It's so awful that if somebody wanted to arrest him for being awful, I would accept it. It's that bad.
Breaking news just landed, and it is already blowing up First Take. The Cleveland Browns have made their call at quarterback, and it is not the call most of that fan base wanted to hear. Dan Orlovsky is not holding back. Kevin Clark is not holding back. And by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly why one word kept getting repeated at that table over and over again. Pathetic. Let's get right into it. So here is what actually happened. Adam Schefter broke the news that Deshaun Watson is going to be QB1 for the Browns going into Week 1 against Jacksonville. That is the headline, but the real story is everything that happened in the 72 hours before that announcement, because this was not some quiet, uneventful quarterback competition. This was a competition that ended with a press conference that stunned people in that building at a performance on tape that a lot of Browns insiders are still talking about today.
Organization run by war criminals. How on earth did the Cleveland Browns just name Deshaun Watson the starter for Week 1? How? How do you possibly come to that conclusion unless you're the most inept organization in world history? That dude completely sucks on and off the field. He is horrible. He's garbage. This is the 5th season. I've seen this season before. It gets worse. He completely bombed at the press conference. That's a career-ending press conference, yet we gave him the keys to the fucking franchise again for the 5th year in a row. War criminals run this organization. If you were at any of the games that Deshaun Watson's playing at, boo!
Kimberly Martin was actually the first one to react, and her take is interesting because she is close to this building. She covers this team on the ground in Cleveland, and her read was simple. She said she is not surprised because the story since February has always been that Deshaun is finally healthy again, and that health, in her mind, was always going to carry the day, no matter what got said in front of a microphone. She pointed out that this is a brand new coaching staff under Todd Monken, a guy who has never worked with Watson before, and that internally, through the bulk of training camp, the belief was that Watson gave this team the best version of what they were building toward, not necessarily the best version on tape in the actual preseason games, through camp competition. That distinction matters a lot, and it is going to come up again later in this video because it is exactly the thing Kevin Clark is not going to let slide.
Cleveland Browns just wrapped up their day 21 practice ahead of the New England Patriots football game. Shedeur Sanders did what he do every single day, but we're going to specifically talk about Deshaun Watson and Jerry Jeudy. Boos are incoming. They looked horrible today.
And that is where Dan Orlovsky just detonates. He does not soften this at all. He says he is shocked. He says he feels awful for the fans of the Cleveland Browns. And then he asks the question that this entire video is built around. How do you watch that press conference, whatever was said in it, and have it not be part of your evaluation? He makes it clear this is not personal for him against Todd Monken or Andrew Berry. He respects both of them, but he says he cannot wrap his head around the decision, especially after laying out exactly what he saw on tape between the two quarterbacks in these preseason games.
All right, fire away.
Why?
What's new?
So the word is out that Deshaun, explain your decision.
Deshaun is going to start against Jacksonville. Took in the full body of work over the course of off-season to training camp to the games, the joint practice, and ultimately felt like to start the season on the road, Deshaun gave us the best chance to move the ball and score points. I mean, that's really what it's about. And felt that way going in the last game, but wasn't sure. And after we talked as a staff,
before we go further, you need to hear this for yourself, because this is the moment that changed the entire conversation in that studio. This is Deshaun Watson explaining why he got booed over the weekend in his own words.
I think Shedeur has done a great job. Come a long ways, and we're excited about his future. But this is not a week-to-week decision.
Was it hard making that decision between Watson and Sanders?
For sure. I mean, any decision where it's so close, right? Both guys competing the rear ends off. I mean, it is a hard decision, right? I mean, it's not a hard decision to start Garrett Bush at defensive end, right? That's easy, right? But that's what we're paid to do, try to put the best players on the field that give us the best chance to score points and move the ball.
Take a second and really sit with what you just heard. He said the fans cheered when he got hurt. That is the line that lit this whole panel on fire. And that brings us to Kevin Clark, who does not waste a single word. His reaction is one sentence long. Pathetic. That is it. That is the whole take. And then he backs it up. He says Watson is wrong about one specific thing in that clip you just watched. He says this was never personal. This is business. This is performance-based. Fans do not boo a guy because they woke up and decided to hate him for no reason. They boo him because, in Kevin's words, he is the avatar for the worst trade in NFL history and the worst contract in NFL history. And Cleveland fans have sat through a lot of bad quarterback football in this city. And even against that low bar, what they have watched from Watson has been among the worst of it. Kevin then goes further than just criticizing the decision. He actually gives his own depth chart for who should be starting ahead of Watson right now, and it includes names you would not expect, all the way down to Bernie Kosar, who is sitting right there in the building as a broadcaster.
Browns head coach Todd Monken stated, "I know what we think and what we see every day in our building, in our players, in the momentum we have, and we're 100% behind Deshaun Watson." He went on to say, "They're not seeing the film. I know what we think and what we see every day. We're 100% behind Deshaun." What are you talking about? We don't see the film. We watch the film over here on this channel every single day, including all 22. I literally invested my time and my money into that.
Kimberly pushes back a little here, and it is worth hearing her out because she's not defending Watson. She's explaining the organizational thinking. She says, in the Browns' minds, Watson gives them the best chance to win right now, today, and that this coaching staff is looking at the total body of work, not just one bad preseason outing. She admits Shedeur clearly outplayed Watson in that specific game. She's not denying that at all, but she says the front office is weighing months of practice reps against one Saturday, and that internally, they do not believe fans should be the ones dictating a starting quarterback, or Watson would not still be on the roster in the first place. That is when Dan Orlovsky says something that stops the conversation cold. He says, and he means this seriously, that Browns fans should not go to the games. Shea actually calls it out live, calling it a tipping point moment on the show. Dan doubles down. He says at some point there has to be a line, and hearing Watson stand at that podium and say he gets more love on the road than he does at home in the city that paid him $230 million fully guaranteed is the kind of thing that pushes a fan base past their limit.
Deshaun Watson and Jerry Jeudy looked horrible today on day 21. As you guys can see, I'm just rolling the tape so you guys can see how bad they looked today, man. This is Deshaun Watson and Jerry Jeudy. You know what I'm saying? He's talking about we're not watching the film. We're watching the film right now. This is what Deshaun Watson is putting out there for us to see. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to continually let this video clip roll, and we're going to get to Shedeur Sanders because that's really why we're here, but I'm just showing you guys how bad it looked. Check down, you know, the man throwing passes to the sideline. I mean, look at this pass play. I mean, what are we doing? How is this man better than Shedeur Sanders? What is Todd Monken talking about? At least name your starter and move on.
Dan keeps going, and this is where the entitlement word comes up. He says, you went there. The organization chose to give you all the money. You have played in 19 games total across your entire Browns tenure. 19! And the performance still has not been good enough to earn that kind of leash. And yet in that press conference, he is standing there with what Dan describes as an attitude that the fan base still owes him continued support no matter what. Dan says flat out, if he were a Browns season ticket holder, he is not going to that home opener, not because he does not want a starting quarterback. He wants whoever gives this team the best chance. He just does not believe that it's Watson.
Not only did he have a touchdown pass to Corley, he also had a touchdown pass to Gage. He did very well today, and he's looking like he's still focused as we expect. This is not going to slow Shedeur Sanders down. He started from number 4 last year to number 1, and now he's just at number 2, one spot away before playing.
Now stop and think about this from the fans' side for a second, because Kimberly is about to completely reframe how you should be looking at this whole thing. Kimberly steps back in and reminds the table of something important. She was actually there. She covered the press conferences, the training camp practices, the games, all of it. And she says a large percentage of that fan base actually supported Watson when he first arrived in Cleveland. People were crying. They thought they finally had their franchise guy. They thought they were getting the 2019 version of Deshaun Watson back. So for him to stand up there and act like this fan base never gave him a chance, she says that is not accurate. And it is part of why the reaction to that press conference has been so intense. This is not a fan base that hated him from day one. This is a fan base that gave him everything and has watched him either be hurt or simply not be good enough over and over again.
Right here is the scramble play. He's going to roll out to his right, and he's going to hook up with Gage Larvidan. Right here, he's going to get outside the pocket, and he's going to hit Gage Larvidan wide open for the touchdown. Shedeur Sanders was the quarterback of today once again.
She also raises the locker room angle, which nobody else at the table had brought up yet. She says whatever is happening with the fans and the noise outside the building, that static does not seem to be filtering into that quarterback room or into that locker room. The guys in there do not appear to have an issue with Watson leading them. And Dan actually turns that right back around and asks the obvious follow-up. If the tape and the practice variance between these two quarterbacks were even remotely close, he says every single arrow in that building would be pointing towards starting Shedeur instead.
Because that's what this channel is all about. But man, I'm telling y'all, I'm up there. Browns practice is officially over. Team was in shells. Deshaun Watson took every snap with the number 1 offense as the newly minted starting quarterback. Shedeur Sanders took the remaining reps. Todd Monken spoke about using these final couple weeks of training camp to get Shedeur Sanders reps before they dive into regular season mode, and Watson.
And this is where Kevin Clark drops what might be the most damning line in the entire segment. He says he personally went to one of these training camp practices, just one out of roughly 20 total practices this camp. And in that one practice, he watched Deshaun Watson throw pick sixes. Not a good look, not a shaky rep here or there. Pick sixes. He says normally you go to a training camp and the established veteran is out there outplaying the young guy on pure experience and command of the operation. That is usually how it works. The vet knows the offense, knows the checks, knows how to speed the operation up without forcing anything. He says he saw zero evidence of that here. Zero evidence that Watson, from a totality standpoint, is a significantly better influence on this Browns offense than Shedeur Sanders, or even than Dylan Gabriel for that matter. What makes this stick is that Kevin is not some outside voice with an agenda against Watson. He says he respects Todd Monken. He says he respects Andrew Berry. He is not questioning their intelligence or their track record building rosters. He is questioning one specific decision based on one specific eyewitness look at the tape, and he is saying it out loud on national television. Anyway, and Dan agrees with him instantly because Dan was watching the actual preseason snaps every single week, and his read lines up with Kevin's read almost exactly. Two different people, two different vantage points, both landing on the same conclusion. That is not a coincidence you can just wave away. When the analyst who studied the tape from home and the reporter who watched it live in person both land in the same place independently, that usually means the tape is telling the truth, whether the front office wants to hear it or not.
What they had to say as we get ready to end this video.
What this sounds like to me, Brandon, imagine you're going to a Michelin star restaurant, correct? And you're waiting for this grandiose food, and you're taking a couple of bites like, man, it's okay, but you finished the meal. Why you finished the meal? Man, because I paid for it already. So this feels like what this is for Deshaun Watson. It seems like it's more contract-based than performance-based, because if you're watching the film, if you're looking at the games, both preseason games,
Kevin then lays out why this decision makes even less sense when you zoom out to the big picture. He points out that no matter who starts at quarterback this season, everyone in that building already understands the real prize sitting at the end of this year is a top 5 pick in what is being called one of the deepest quarterback draft classes in years. Arch Manning, C.J. Carr, Dante Moore, Josh Hoover, names like that. So Kevin's question is simple. Why would you spend this entire season alienating your own fan base with a quarterback who's on the last year of his deal, who the front office has already reportedly signaled they want out of town, when there is no real long-term upside to any of it either way? Kevin actually walks through both outcomes for you. Say Watson goes out and plays well this year. Fine, he is still gone after the season. The Browns are still picking near the top of a draft loaded with quarterback talent, so a good year from Watson does not actually change the long-term plan at all. Now flip it. Say Watson struggles the way he has struggled for most of his Cleveland tenure. Now you have burned an entire season of goodwill with your fan base, you have made the Watson experiment look even worse in hindsight, and you still end up in roughly the same draft position anyway. Kevin's point is that there is no version of this where starting Watson over Shedeur actually pays off for where this franchise says it wants to go. Best case, it is neutral. Worst case, and this is the one everybody at that table thinks is more likely, it actively damages the relationship between this team and the city that has to keep buying tickets to watch it. And Kevin does not stop there either, because he brings up the contract itself. He points out that cutting Watson outright is not really an option, since the dead money left over from that restructured deal, the same deal already labeled the worst contract in league history, would be brutal to absorb all at once. So the Browns are kind of stuck carrying him either way, active roster or not. Kevin says if it were up to him, he would have rather sent Watson home entirely, let him sit out the year, and handed the keys to Shedeur with zero ambiguity about who the guy is. He knows that is not realistic, given the money and the optics of doing that to a $230 million quarterback, but his point still stands. Even in a world where the front office is not ready to fully move on from Watson, that does not mean he had to be the one taking snaps in Week 1 against Jacksonville.
And I felt like when we heard the words coming from Deshaun Watson's mouth on Saturday, it felt like, to be honest, it felt like a guy that was finally able to vent what's been going on in his mind. And it also kind of gave me the kind of inkling that, okay, if he's venting like this, then maybe he has some assurances that he's going to go out there and be the starter. So that's the first time we saw a real raw reaction from Deshaun Watson regarding the boos, regarding what people have been saying about him.
And here is the part that really should stop you in your tracks. Kevin doesn't think Watson is just below average this year. He thinks Watson could end up being one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the entire league. Full stop. Kevin wraps his thought by saying he thinks Watson has a real shot at being closer to the 32nd best starting quarterback in the NFL than anywhere near the middle of the pack. That is not a throwaway line either. That is a guy who watches every quarterback in this league for a living, putting a real number on where he thinks this season is headed. And Dan closes the segment almost quietly compared to how loud he came in, admitting that he is not shocked the Browns leaned Watson the entire time, deep down. He says if you had asked him back in March who would be starting Week 1, some part of him always suspected it would be Watson. Health and money and sunk cost all pulling in the same direction. What actually shocked him is that the organization did not use that press conference as their out. He says every front office occasionally needs a clean, easy reason to move on from a costly mistake without admitting it was a mistake out loud. And this press conference practically wrote that reason for them. A tone-deaf comment about the fan base, delivered less than 48 hours before the decision, would have been the perfect off-ramp. Instead, they walked right past it and named him the guy anyway. He says maybe that tells you the real decision was already locked in long before any of those comments were ever made in front of a camera. And if that is true, then this was never really a competition in the first place. It was a formality with a predetermined ending, and the fan base just watched it play out in real time. Cheers, boos, press conference, and all.
I felt
we
like
both thought it was gonna be
I
short.
felt like last week they was pointing to that, right? And I saw kind of how they was moving in practice, and I'm like, all right, well, Shedeur, go out there and play best you can and get better. I figured that Deshaun Watson would go out, and even I thought he wasn't going to play, but when I saw him trot back out here in the third quarter, I said, oh no, why y'all doing that? Because you're going to expose him to actually finding out that he has not been good during training camp. Like, let's be clear. I don't think he's outplayed Shedeur Sanders at no points in this competition, and he was with the first team.
So let's put this whole thing together. You have a quarterback who just publicly said his own home fans cheer when he gets hurt. You have Dan Orlovsky telling season ticket holders not to bother showing up. You have Kevin Clark calling the entire decision pathetic on national television and ranking 5 other options ahead of Watson on his own roster. And you have Kimberly Martin, someone who is actually in that building every single day, saying the tape gap between these two quarterbacks has to be enormous behind closed doors for this decision to make any sense at all. Either the Browns know something about that practice tape that the public has not seen, or this organization just walked into one of the most avoidable public relations disasters in recent NFL memory days before the season even starts. So let's recap where this actually leaves us, because there is a lot to hold on to here. A veteran ESPN insider sitting courtside for training camp says he personally watched pick sixes and saw nothing that separates Watson from the other options on this roster. A former NFL quarterback who broke down every preseason snap says the tape gap between Watson and Shedeur was not close. The starting quarterback himself stood in front of a camera and told this city's fan base that they cheered when he got hurt. And the front office, with all of that sitting right in front of them, still named him the guy less than 48 hours later. That is not a small disagreement about who looked sharper in a preseason game. That is a franchise making a real bet with real money and a real fan base's patience on the line, and doing it in a way that even people who cover this team closely cannot fully explain. So now it is your turn, because at the end of the day, this whole segment comes down to one question, and the panel could not fully agree on it either. Do you think the Browns made this call because the practice tape genuinely says Deshaun Watson gives them the best chance to win right now, or do you think this was a franchise protecting a $230 million investment no matter what the tape actually showed? Drop your answer in the comments right now. Watson or Shedeur? Tell us which one you would have started week 1 and why, and tell us if you think this decision comes back to bite the Browns before this season is even over. And if you want more breakdowns like this the second something breaks in Cleveland, make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss it, because this quarterback battle is not over just because a starter got named. If Watson stumbles out of the gate against Jacksonville, this exact conversation is going to be right back on your screen within a matter of weeks, and you already know exactly which 2 names are going to be trending when it happens. Smash like and subscribe.